Hey, Shalom Yesharala. Peace be unto the nation of Israel, whom automatically so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and speckled Israelites, being the Israelite foreigners, scattered across the four corners of the earth, including within America, Babylon the Great, the main place for our captivity, and we are the Most High Yahweh's chosen people of the nation of Israel. So without further ado, as always, in the Lashwan Kodash, being the holy tongue, as in the Paleo Hebrew, being the ancient Hebrew, I'm going to give all praises, glory, infinite honor to my power, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom is the God of the living, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baruch Kodash, which is our praise to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, and the Holy Spirit, whom is our strength and our Redeemer, and our light and our salvation. In the same tongue, Adam Mashana, Kabawadium, Lahasaquanium, Shal, Gadawarakab, meaning double honors to the apostles and elder bishops, great millstone, and Shalom, honors and salutations to Bayath Shadawadah, meaning the house of David of the 1/3 elect of the nation of Israel, along with the rest of the 1/3 elect men, women, and children of Israel. All right. So, fellow servant Malak Rayab, back at it again with another lesson through the spirit of prophecy, being a testimony of our Lord and Savior, Hamashiach Habashai, who the masses of the world ignorantly refers to as Jesus Christ. And he's providing another Harmagad one update, or the biblical war, or the biblical name or reference to this last world's war, which is the war to end all wars, all right, modernly known as World War III. All right, providing more geoeconomical updates, more updates on these war provocations on behalf of this current U.S. administration under DJT. All right. The conflict between the U.S. and China intensifying over Taiwan. All right. Which, including the Israelis, the condom hat imposters. All right. Carrying out an attack, another attack against Beirut, Lebanon. All right, reportedly against Hezbollah, taking out another one of their military officials. All right, and the current U.S. ally through Turkey, all right, on behalf of Erdogan, calling for the destruction of the state of Israel, of the Israeli state. So there's a lot that's going on. All right, and it's going to further lead into geoeconomical turmoil, all right, that'll more so affect the already failing and plummeting U.S. economy, without a further transition, into civil war and then full-fledged war, all right, which is all, before that full-fledged war takes place, the mark of the beast, being a microchip, must be implemented, all right, by being made mandatory. Case in point. So, I'm going to bring out some information, all right, regarding these quote unquote World War III updates. All right. And Adam Ratazaz and Lord willing to be further edifying is to elect. All right. So this is on CBS News, and it says under the business section entitled Dow plunges more than 1,600 points as stocks recoil from tariff shock. All right. So it says stocks cratered in the U.S. on Thursday as anxious investors try to assess the potential economic impact of the latest round of Trump administration tariffs. Right, which took place yesterday, April 2nd, which marked the day deemed by Trump as quote unquote Liberation Day. Liberation meaning freedom, right? To be liberated, to be made free. Okay, as if to say, they would be made free. The U.S., the whore, America, Babylon the Great, would be made free, from the the geoeconomical slavery from these other nations, which doesn't make any sense because America, is not known as a producing corporation. It's the contrary, because that's why America imports more than it exports. So by DJT, suggesting or implying that the U.S. would be made free, from these tariffs, or aka taxes that these foreign nations slap or apply on the goods they export to us that we import from them, okay, is not being liberated from them. It's just really, all it is just further provoking them into conspiring to destroy America, Babylon the Great, on behalf of these war provocations. Case in point. But it says the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 1,679 points or 4% to close at 40,546. The S&P 500 sank 274 points or 4.8%, its biggest one-day drop since the CV19 torpedoed financial markets in 2020. So they're saying they're reporting that, the Dow Jones plummeting well over 1,600 points and nearly 1,700 points is the largest drop economically within this, affecting this U.S. economy since 2020, around, the height of the CV 1 to 9 pestilence. Okay. Says that amounts to a loss of roughly $2 trillion, according to data from FactSet. All right. As if America, Babylon Great, didn't already have enough debt, which is well over $36.6 trillion in debt already on the global debt clock. All right. So this Dow Jones, Dow Jones industrial average, is essentially just an influx, of multiple, traders that provides an average, or an overall, marker. All right. So to say, as to where the U.S. economy currently stands. So when the Dow drops, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average drastically drops, that's a telltale sign that this U.S. economy is getting ready to collapse. All right. So now let's go ahead and play this quick video by DJT. I'm going to now refer to some information on X, and we're going to bring out some precepts.
You can essentially have Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. And the other countries, and they all understand, we're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe. But they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. We're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it. Brazil, 10%, 10%. Bangladesh is 74%. So you see what's going on. Pakistan, 58%. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiation.
All right, so this large chart that he's showing, as it says in in the description, is basically an outline of, his reciprocal tariff plan, which just to further enlarge it here on X. All right, you can see all these countries that he slapped these tariffs on. So he wasn't playing when he said he was going to do that. All right, so I'm gonna focus on the relevant countries. All right, China. All right, that holds. There's one of the top two holders of American debt through the Treasury bonds. As a result of exchanging their own, Chinese currency, to indulge in trade with the, with the U.S. through the petrodollar. So it's very interesting that he's applied a 34% reciprocal tariff or tariffs on China. Okay, which is going to come back to really, bite Esau in his ass. But, this is further confirms all orchestrated, because it's been further pointed out by the geoeconomical experts and so forth. This reciprocal trade war, aka Liberation Day, is going to more so affect the pockets of the middle and lower class U.S. tax-paying citizens. All right, which really at this point there's really no such thing as a middle class, because everyone's going to be on that same playing field soon. All right, so you got as you say, European Union had a 20% tariffs applied, or reciprocated against them. Taiwan, 32% against them. Let's jump down. United Kingdom, all right, the mother of the harlot, the UK, 10%, representing Britain. Brazil, 10% on them, which Brazil, is known for their iron and other precious resources. All right. What's very interesting here is the Israelis on here, Amalek. All right. In which, according to this information, they've had 17% tariffs for applied on them. And that's really a smokescreen, but that's very interesting because, America is the largest supporter of the Israeli state. So that's very interesting. They have them on there, but it says, all right, so let's just segue over to here. Let me see. United Arab Emirates, 10% on them. Myanmar just got hit with 44% tariffs, which is very interesting because they just got devastated by an earthquake, resulting in multitude dead, like around 2,000 or something, or whatnot. Saudi Arabia, 10% on them. All right, so let's go ahead and segue over to this next article. All right, this is on Leo Holman.substack platform. It says Trump's foreign policy moves starting to look like that of a desperate dying empire. All right, I'm going to get into why that is, within this lesson, but towards the end of this information in this paragraph, it says, sadly, it's becoming clear that the U.S. is losing influence in the world, and that's prophesied. And Isaiah 19 and 3 says the spirit of Egypt, shall fail, which is the spirit of bondage. All right, through their petrodollar, through their other aspects of their wine, through their philosophies, through their sodomy, alphabet agenda. All right, their feminism, Mater Dei, Queen of Heaven, Semiramis, worship. Their covetousness, their lasciviousness, all right, their politics, their military industrial complex. So it says, sadly, it's becoming clear that the U.S. is losing influence in the world. The dollar is faltering. The debt keeps soaring. The economy is teetering. And our leaders are behaving like those running a dying empire. And these are the words by Gerald Celente. Okay, he may be a Jake, but he's the legendary chief editor of the Trends Journal. You can find him. You can find him on YouTube as well. But it says, he went on to say, the U.S. has to stop acting like the biggest, baddest bully on the block when everyone knows it has a soft underbelly. War isn't the answer. All right. So let's go ahead and get the first precept in Revelation 6 and 4. Okay. And all right. And it says, and there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. It says, and there was given to him a great sword. All right. And the horse is symbolic of power, authority. So it says in Ecclesiastes, 10, and, the 10th chapter, where it said that the servant will be upon a horse and the prince will be roaming the earth or walking the earth, roughly paraphrasing. So this is referring to, he who was in that position of authority or power. Hence, the symbolism of a horse is that red dragon. Okay, the old ancient serpent, which was that dragon, Revelation 12 and 9, Esau, Edom. The old ancient serpent called a dragon that is in that red dragon specifically. All right, because Esau is red in appearance by that, that biblical element known as leprosy, the mark of Cain. That's why the Edomites are the only people or nation that looks like that. All right, because it's a further memorial of them being a curse or being perceived as a curse before the Lord, Yahweh B'Shem Yashai. Case in point. All right. And Shalom to all you Akim and Akwa tuning in. Case in point. All right. But this is Revelation 6 and 4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat there on to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And this further confirms this is talking about Esau. All right. When you read Genesis, the 27th chapter, around the 41st verse, our forefather Isaac, another pre-incarnation of Yahushai, gave Esau, Edom, his blessing, okay, which is a sword. And that's why Esau's military industrial complex is an extension of his blessing, which is that sword. And that's how we're further able to identify who he is prophetically. So this is Revelation 6:5. It says, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. All right. So this is, so the balances are going into, rationings, as in food rationings. All right. Because we're approaching a famine. So this is Revelation 6:4. It says, and there went out another horse that was red. That's Lakia, verse 6. It says, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. All right. To further expound on the fact that there's going to be, food rationings. Why? Because we're going to be in the midst of a famine. All right. So these trade wars, okay, are going to further they're going to further contribute into this famine because it's going to further, increase inflation and transition into hyperinflation. Okay. Regarding the price of goods skyrocketing. Okay. In the midst of a U.S. economy that's plummeting as we speak, okay, where people are are already struggling to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck collectively, and then on this is his so-called reciprocal trade tariffs, of the trade war, aka Liberation Day that took place yesterday, the 2nd, is going to further contribute into this U.S. economy eventually collapsing. So this is, let me go ahead and segue over to this next precept in the book of Revelation 13:11. To speak on that dragon, okay, the old ancient serpent called a dragon. All right, in Revelation 12:9. Read that real quick. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil and Satan. Salaki for misquoting that. It says, and the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him, meaning what his angels and messengers, through his army, his military, will be cast out, meaning what? They're going to be defeated by being slaughtered by Yahushua and his angels. All right. So this is that old serpent, the old ancient serpent, okay, which is also that great dragon, that great red dragon, okay, called the devil and Satan. All right. Because, the devil in the Latin diabolos means accuser. And the synonym for that is deceiver. All right. And this devil deceived the entire world through his wine, keeping that veil over everyone's eyes. OK, blinding them to the fact that he is a devil that came to steal, murder, and destroy, mentioned in St. John 10:10. So with that, let's segue over to Revelation 13:11. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. All right. As America is, the whore that sits upon many waters of this beast system. Right. And the 2 horns of this modern day beast system, this modern day pagan Roman Empire, the splitting image of the pagan Roman Empire being America. All right. Has 2 horns like a lamb, speaking as a dragon, or referring to the Democrats and Republicans. All right. Formerly known as I believe it's the plebeians and the patricians in the Roman Empire. So this further confirms that America is Rome all over again. It is further prophesied in the 12th verse, Revelation 13:12 says, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him. All right, referring to the 4th beast in Daniel, the 7th chapter. All right, being the pagan Roman Empire. It says, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And that deadly wound that was healed was of the pagan Roman Empire, further confirming that America is the splitting image of Rome all over again. Okay. So speaking of that, I'm going to segue over to this next article on history.com, and it's entitled 8 Reasons Why Rome Fell. It says, find out why one of history's most legendary empires finally came crashing down. So let's just jump straight down to the point. The section, economic troubles and over-reliance on slave labor. It says, even as Rome was under attack from outside forces, it was also crumbling from within thanks to a severe financial crisis. Constant wars and overspending had significantly lightened imperial coffers, and oppressive taxation. You see that? And oppressive taxation. That's exactly what these tariffs are that Trump is applying on these goods that we import. that's going to affect us more than these foreign traders, despite the madness that he's spewing, thus speaking like a dragon. You know what I'm saying? Like it was prophesied in Revelation 13:11. Okay. This devil is orchestrating a collapse, a U.S., an economic collapse in America, Babylon the Great. So it says, an oppressive taxation and inflation had widened the gap between rich and poor. In the hope of avoiding the taxman, many members of the wealthy class or classes had even fled to the countryside and set up independent fiefdoms. Let me see here. Jump it down. It says, at the same time, the empire was rocked by a labor deficit. Rome's economy depended on slaves to fill its fields and work as craftsmen. All right, does that sound familiar? You have corporate in America, all right, full of debt slaves, indentured servants, okay, slaving, okay, just to not get paid within a week on average, biweekly, which is 2 weeks, and in some cases monthly, which is wicked because, that's transgression against the law, statutes, commandments of Yahweh by Hashem Yeshai. All right, Leviticus 19:13 says a man is supposed to get paid, at the end of his shift. You see, it's fair to confirm that this devil, Esau, Edom, subclaiming white man, all right, is the devil the Bible speaks of, man, a defrauder, a deceiver, an accuser of the righteous, all right, to do false accusations / reports, all right, a murderer, okay, a scoundrel. You see, and that's why the world is speaking up against this devil through this, because why? Because truth has entered into the earth, to spring out into the earth, pursuing Psalm 85:11. All right, continuing on this information, it says Rome's economy depended on slaves to fill his fields and work as craftsmen, and his military might had traditionally provided a fresh influx of conquered peoples to put to work. But when expansion ground to a halt in the 2nd century, Rome's supply of slaves and other war treasures began to dry up. A further blow came in the 5th century when the Vandals claimed North Africa and began disrupting the empire's trade by prowling the Mediterranean as pirates. With its economy faltering and its commercial and agricultural production in decline, the empire began to lose its grip on Europe. So what's happening right now through the Spirit? All right. America, Babylon the Great, the hammer of the entire earth, is beginning to lose their grip on the EU. All right, the European vassal states that essentially answers to them, okay, at this point. And that's why, through the Spirit, we're going to segue back over to what he said here.
Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge Union, they're very tough. See? Very, very.
Right, just a little bit.
Pakistan, 58%. European Union, they're very tough. Very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to say. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
See?
Vietnam.
So you said, the European Union are tough. You see? And they're supposedly ripping them off. And that's just rhetoric. All right. So let's get some more information. These articles. Let me see. You play this video here.
Veronica, by increasing shipments, have been preparing for this moment by increasing shipments since the campaign season.
Like you.
Want to bring U.S. ports. Large importers have been preparing for this moment.
Let me go back in. I'm not sure why. I want to just reload.
President Trump's tariffs are already being felt at U.S. ports. Large importers have been preparing for this moment by increasing shipments since the campaign season. I want to bring in CBS News Bay Area reporter Veronica Macias, who's live right now in Oakland, California. Veronica, for our national viewers, the Port of Oakland primarily deals with imports from Asia. What's been the impact?
Good morning, Vlad. But look behind me. Just by taking a look, you can kind of get the perspective of just how many imported goods come into this port here in Oakland. It's considered the 9th busiest container port in all of the U.S. That's according to data from 2023. And yes, 74% of the goods here, they're coming from Asia. So Americans can start to pay more for things like cars, auto imports. Car parts are coming from Asian manufacturers that are exporting from Japan and South Korea. And think of all the electronic goods that are coming into this port of Oakland that are also coming from Asia. There's a tariff on semiconductor chips, and these chips, of course, basically considered just the brains to all the imported electronic goods that we use here in the U.S. So tariffs are going to be a big part of all the items that are coming into this port here. We know that this port already is busy this morning, and we know that as soon as these items now come in with these tariffs, it's here that they're going to pay these taxes for these imported goods. They're going to come in and they're paid through an electronic form, then that payment sent to the U.S. Treasury. So Americans using all of these things, and you can see just by all the containers here how much we rely on imported goods and how much it's supposed to generate billions of dollars in tariffs.
All right, Veronica, I'm asking us for us this morning.
Speaking of semiconductor chips that she mentioned, which I believe Taiwan is one of the largest, if not the largest, producer of semiconductor chip technology, because Esau wants access to the technology because the microchip, all right, is going to replace this already plummeting petrodollar that's already losing its value constantly and frequently anyway throughout in international trade, by way of these foreign nations and / adversaries of America, finding ways to maneuver around, indulging international trade outside of the petrodollar through their own independent currencies and so forth, and their own independent digital currencies. So that's the main reason why Esau has infiltrated Taiwan. Is not to play the humanitarian role. That's all a smokescreen. Obviously, it's to possess. It's to use them weak ass Moabites over there in Taiwan, as another proxy against China to obtain that semiconductor technology, the semiconductor chip technology. And speaking of chip, let me go and segue over to this information here. It's on WhiteHouse.gov. It says, fact sheet, President DJT modernizes payments to and from America's bank account. All right, it's reported on a few days ago, March 25th. It says today, DJT signed an executive order to modernize how the government handles money, switching from old-fashioned paper-based payments to fast, secure electronic payments. All right, so essentially all this means is that Esau is looking to further push, the aspect of the vibration of a cashless society. Okay, so that's why there's a report that they want to, they really want to have everything digitalized by this summer, around June. All right, so it says the order mandates that effective September 30, 2025, the federal government will cease issuing paper checks for all disbursements, including intra-governmental payments, benefits, vendor payments, and tax refunds. All right, so the brother said we almost. Let me get it on the brother Amraya Shalom Akia. He said, we almost to the hour of temptation. Hey, man, we getting closer and closer, man. All right. So it says, this is the main part. All executive departments and agencies must transition to modern electronic funds transfer methods like direct deposit, debit, credit card payments, digital wallets. See that? And real-time transfers. See, this is what this is all about. Okay. The transition from this current monetary system where cash is still king to digital currencies. And that's why they promote cryptocurrency and all that shit, and then ultimately to, present the chip, the mark of the beast, and eventually make it mandatory. So, everything it's all, this World War III algorithm is all within that path to the chip. And once that's made mandatory, then the nuke's going to start flying soon after that to fulfill the next major prophecy after the mark of the beast, which is Hammar-God-1. All right. That's why we keep hearing about these rumors of wars. And speaking of which, segue over to China. Speaking of Taiwan, the Taiwan proxy, war against China on behalf of the whole America. I was going to bring out this article here on the Hill. It says White House issues warning to China for war games near Taiwan. The Trump administration on Tuesday issued a warning to China after Beijing announced large-scale war games in the waters and airspace around Taiwan. All right. And here's the interesting thing. Speaking of liberation, right? Trump's liberation, reciprocal tariffs. It says the joint military drills, which were launched with no prior notice and included China's army, navy, and air and rocket forces were meant as a severe warning and forceful containment against Taiwan independence, according to a spokesperson for China's People's Liberation Army. So that's very interesting that their army is known as the China's People's Liberation Army, when Trump just named his reciprocal tariff day as in yesterday, Liberation Day. That's very, hey man, Yahweh Shemashai has a sense of humor. And there's another part of him mocking you heathen, okay, before he brings destruction upon you, because he's the host of the battles, it says in Isaiah the 13th chapter. Now, this is a similar article I'm going to segue to on CBS News under the World section. It says China holds major war games around Taiwan as U.S. boosts ties with Japan to deter Chinese military aggression. Now, here's the main point I want to focus on. All right, it's really stood out to me. It says, let me see. So China's latest exercises around Taiwan come days after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited Japan, where he announced a boost to America's close military partnership with the Asian nation aimed directly at countering Chinese aggression in the region. So through the spirit, what Moab and China did is they purposely held a military drill soon after this U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited the Ammonites in Japan, all right, where he announced a boost to America's close military partnership. Now, ironically, this is the same devil, Pete Hegseth, that was involved in that leaked secret war plan against Yemen that was leaked to a journalist on behalf of the Atlantic journalist platform. You see that? So, meaning what? This is further confirms that this devil is being exposed, man. All right, for all his conspired wickedness behind closed doors. It says in Jeremiah 49:10, Esau is being made bare, okay, for all his wickedness that he's perpetuating in the earth. All right, so let me see. Yep, speaking of China, let me bring this out. It's on Reuters.com. It says, friends forever, never enemies. Chinese foreign minister tells Russia, okay, 3 days ago when the China foreign minister Wang Yi visited Russia to quote unquote deepen their strategic ties against who? The whore, America, Babylon the Great. Okay, I mean there's not much more needed to be said on that. For those who are able to connect the dots, there's World War III algorithm. So speaking of Russia, let me see. Let me bring some up here. Oh man, look at this. So on Express US says first German troop deployment since World War II lands on Putin's doorstep. And Germany is a current NATO ally. Germany has embarked on its first permanent foreign deployment since World War II, with the nation's parliament approving the dispatch of troops to eastern Lithuania along NATO's eastern boundary. This marks a historic moment for Germany, all right, the Teamanites, as it will be the inaugural occasion of a continuous German military presence overseas since the Second World War. Oh, look at that. All right. So let me see. With that, let me see. I believe that was it. Oh, and then Putin. Yep. Look at this, man. Fox News. Putin conscripts 160,000 men as Russia eyes Ukraine offensive. All right. So basically, all right, Slovakia. Madness. So Putin is calling for a military draft. He's calling for a military draft over there in Russia for men ages 18 to 30. And who knows whether or not he'll extend that military draft in Russia to women. But we know Esau's going to do that in America. All right. There's the NDAA has already been mailing notices to individuals in America. So, hey, man, this thing is getting hot. It's getting hot and heavy. OK, so I'm going to go ahead and get I'm going to go ahead and segue over to Revelation 18. And I'm going to get this. I'm going to read verses 1 to 8 in the NIV. All right. All right. So it says here, Revelation 18:1 NIV. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. It's talking about Yahushua. It says in Daniel 10, verse 5 to 6. His presence was enlightened by his wisdom, roughly paraphrasing. It says, was that Ecclesiastes, how wisdom maketh a man's face to shine? Yahushua's epitome of wisdom. Verse 2, NIV, says, with a mighty voice he shouted, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit. All right, it is a part of Esau's wine, mentioned earlier. A haunt for every unclean bird. A haunt, okay, a haunt for every unclean and detestable animal, right? Because these animals, all right, are also governed by Yahweh Shemeshai, and they're going to be haunting these wicked individuals, man. Okay, feasting on these dead carcasses. All right, as a result of the famine, prophesied in the scriptures. Okay, as a result of the civil war, due to the scarcity of resources. Okay, in fear of famine, these Babylonians are going to be, warring over scarcity of resources, like in that movie World War Z with Brad Pitt. You know what I'm saying? Where in the supermarket, motherfuckers going ape shit, man. Okay, because of faithlessness in Yahweh by Shemeshai and faith in Esau's system, they're gonna perish. All right, and those dead carcasses are gonna be feasted on by these beasts. Right, these fowls of the air. All right. Another ensign of war coming. Revelation 18:3 NIV. All right. It says, for all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. So, it says in Jeremiah 51, and I believe in the 7th verse. And the nations are drunk of her wine and they are mad. They're in a frenzy. They want to destroy America, taking vengeance upon her. All right. For affecting their individual sovereignties of their own, foreign nations. It goes on to say, the kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries, all right, and especially through her petrodollar. Okay. Having to accumulate debt just to use this whore, America Babylon the Great, okay, to bolster their own economy, on behalf of their own sovereign vision or visions. All right. Revelation 18:4 NIV says, then I heard another voice from heaven say, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. So this is Yahweh Shah calling for the elect, specifically the house of David, 144,000, along with the rest of the 1/3 elect men, women, and children of Israel that still remain alive at the time to be translated into the chariot, man, into the fathership of all chariots. Okay. That Yahweh Shai is going to descend into this realm and bringing war upon the whore America Babylon the Great, her angels, and rescue heathen nations that will fight against the Lamb and his angels. All right. Revelation 18:5. Jump down in the NIV. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and the Most High God Yahweh by Shemeshai had remembered her crimes. See, all right. Says in Sirach 23:19, the eyes of the Lord Yahweh by Shemeshai are 10,000 times brighter than the sun. And he doesn't, and it also says that he remembers the past. Roughly paraphrasing. Ecclesiastes 3:15. Meaning what? In terms of Israel, his precious holy people, he hasn't forgotten all the wickedness, through the oppression and affliction. All right. And the sadistic things that you devils have done against our people. All right. Revelation 18:6 NIV says, give back to her as she had given. Slakia, give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Pour her a double portion from her own cup. A cup of the Lord Yahweh by Shemeshai's indignation, righteous anger. You devils will have to you have to drink without a chaser. Have it drink that entire cup of the double portion of the cup of indignation, including all the dregs from the bottom of that cup. Everything. Meaning what? You will receive full-fledged wrath from Yahweh by Shemeshai, and including the famine that will cause a lot of you Edomites to starve to death out here, including you MAGA, you reprobate MAGA supporters of DJT. A lot of you gonna starve to death, or if you don't die by the famine, you're gonna die by the sword. Okay, Revelation 18:7, and everyone else whose name is not written in the book of life for salvation of the elect of Israel, or it will suffer the fate of the plagues of Yahweh by Shemeshai's indignation. This is Revelation 18:7 in the NIV, and it says, "Give her as much torment and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. In her heart she boasts, I sit enthroned as queen. I am not a widow. I will never mourn. That's Esau's mentality, representing the whore, America. This her spoken about here, America, Babylon the Great, that they'll never fall. It says in Psalm 49:11, it's in their inward thoughts that their houses will continue forever. Okay. This is why DJT has that demon of pride on him, because he's just a typical Edomite, man. Taking his orders from the Mossad. And this is why, them ish condom hat lobbyists run these politicians in the U.S. I believe it's called APAC. It says further confirms that these condom hats, these Amalekites, run every damn thing in this earth. This is Revelation 18:8 in the NIV. It says, therefore, in one day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God Yahweh by Shemeshai, who judges her. Okay, so that's a part of that full cup, man. That full double portion cup you devils gonna have to drink. And you devils, you're gonna be hiding on the ground. You Amalekites, you're gonna be hiding on the ground to try to escape this fate, like the cowards you are, man. Like the hoes you are, but you're not gonna escape. Okay, this is speaking of fire. Okay, being brought upon you, and how the whore will be burned with fire is going to get Job. Job 15:34. It says, for the congregation of hypocrites shall be desolate, and fire shall consume the tabernacles of bribery. Okay, tabernacle is a home, our dwelling place, a house. All right, and the main house or headquarters of the iniquity of you devils that has been made the standard of America. Iniquity, sin upon sin is America, the whore that sits upon many waters, is in many governments. All right, in which you've been using. All right, through your influence, through the petrodollar, your military industrial complex, to threaten these nations with war. Okay, such as the Ammonites in World War II. You draw a fat man, a little boy on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, eliminating at least 10,000 Ammonites. Okay, but they see that's when you devils will fear. You're no longer feared anymore, because you no longer you're not the only nation that possesses weapons of mass destruction, and you're angry about that. And this is why, out of your narcissistic, entitled pride, you call for the likes of Iran, the biblical Elamites, for example, to surrender their nukes when you fucking have nukes, man. So you're hypocrites. Case in point, I did in one of the past lessons within this past day or two, I mentioned how Esau in the U.S. recently conducted a military drill. You see, with nukes. All right, you can't make this shit up. But yeah, they're calling for Iran to give up their nukes. You devils don't think these nations see what you're doing? Of course they do. And more of these Babylonians in America that are becoming more privy to your devices, because the spirit of bondage is wearing off in modern day Egypt, America, the house of bondage. That's why fire is going to consume the tabernacles of bribery through these cash rewards. You know what I'm saying? Such as the ones they were offering around the height of the CV-19. In exchange for people agreeing to wear their face coverings, their face diapers, case in point. All right. Your briberies in the music industry, for enticing Jake to sign these demonic record contracts, for further example. All right. All right. Your other bribes that you do behind closed doors, further exposing you as a devil. All right. The treacherous deceiver that you are. This is Job 15:35. They conceive mischief and bring forth vanity, and their belly prepared deceit. That's why, you devils have been conspiring wickedness behind closed doors, man. This is Habakkuk 2:4. It says, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. There's nothing upright about you, devils. Nothing godly about you. Okay. Verse 5 says, yea, also because he transgresses by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Because you're a vagabond. You Edomite, a vagabond, just like your forefather Cain. That's why what Frederick confirms that you stole America from the north, the true founding fathers, the northern kingdom of Israel. Okay. All right. You invaded Libya, took out Gaddafi under the guise of terrorism. You took out Saddam Hussein under the guise of terrorism when he was your ally in around 1988, using him to war against Iran. But you conveniently left that part out, okay? When you carried out your assassination attempt against him, your successful assassination attempt against him. Case in point. So you devils and vagabonds, you're not keepers at home. You don't have a home to claim as your own, man. So yea, also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. But gathered unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Okay. All right. Through your wine. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay, and the Hebrew word there for clay is abat, he is in debt. Okay. That's being further accumulated through these trade wars, man. And that's all tariffs are, taxes that further increases debt. This is Proverbs 22:16. It says, he that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want. Because these upper echelon devils are not, mainly the Mossad, okay, through the state of Israel, the Israeli state that, these American politicians gets the orders from, all right, and these U.S. politicians, all right, are not, are not being affected, okay, by these taxes and debt, all right, because they're part of the upper class, the wealthy class, if you will, all right, pocketing all the money laundering and whatnot, okay, it's us, the bottom of the barrel, who Amalek refers to as Goyim, the Goyim that's being affected by this madness that Esau is perpetuating, man. So this is Psalm 15:5. It says, he that putteth not out his money to usury, he nor taketh reward against the innocent. All right. He's really talking about Jake. He that doeth these things shall never be moved. All right. Now just say in Job 4:7, who shall perish be innocent? But once again, it's really talking about Jake. All right. Those who are considered spotless and blameless, the elect of the Israelites, before the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai. This is the word for usury. The Hebrew word nasak, or slakia. Nasak or nashak, meaning interest. That's wickedness. When you borrow or get a loan from Esau, instead of paying him back what you owe, what you actually borrow from him, he'll attach interest on it, man. Equivalent to these tariffs. In case in point, we already pay taxes on the goods that we consume, that we purchase. But then he has the audacity to call for an annual taxation period around tax season at the beginning of every fucking year, man. See, this is so going back to Psalm 15:5. He that putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent, he that doeth these things shall never be moved. That's why the house of the proud is being moved. Again, Leviticus 19:13. Okay. Further confirmed, there's nothing godly about America, Babylon the Great. This is Leviticus 19:13. It says, thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night into the morning. So this is a law. America, Babylon the Great doesn't abide by these laws because Esau is ungodly. He's a devil. Okay. He wasn't created to abide by the laws. It says in Psalm 50, verses 16 and 17, what is thou to do to declare my statutes? You shall rebel more and more. In the mighty day sense, you devils, all right, that would further pertain to you devils, man. Because you're not upholders of the law, statutes, commandments of Yahweh, Shem and Shai, but rather your laws and your bylaws. All right. So back in Habakkuk 2 and continuing verse 7, it says, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? Okay, you mean what? You're gonna be booty, spoils of war to these nations, and especially the most terrible of them. Okay, it says verse 8. Let me get this quick precept. All right, because what's going to happen in terms of this prophecy? People are going to rise up and bite you. I mean, what they're going to rise up and afflict you. And it's going to start with a civil war. As a result of these trade wars, that further lead into full-fledged civil war in the midst of a famine. It's 2 Ezra 15, start of verse 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Woe, war. Okay. But it says in Ecclesiastes 3 and 8, we're living in a time of war, not peace and love. roughly paraphrasing. Okay. All right. This is 2 Ezra 15 and 15. For the sword and the destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Meaning what? Modern day swords, firearms, other weapons of death. Okay. Verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. All right. Sedition. All right. Uprisings against wicked, corrupt, tyrannical governments, including America. It says, they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and their course of their action shall stand in their power. Why? Because their own well-being is going to be considered over the interests of America. All right. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. All right. You're going to shut down the borders. All right. You're going to have his military surveillance in the land, replacing law enforcement. Be checking for people to, check to see if people have the chip. All right. Little checkpoints and so forth. It says in verse 18, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. People are going to be breaking into each other's houses. That howdy neighbor, that fake ass, howdy neighbor, fake civility spirit is going to be a thing of the past. Okay, well, these people are going to show their inner demons. Okay, when all hell breaks loose. This is verse 19. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of lack of bread, and for great tribulation. All right. Once again, why? It's going to be a famine. Behold, said the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me, which are from the rising of the sun, from the south, from the east, and Libanus, to turn themselves one against another and repay the things that they have done to them. All right. So the reason why this full-fledged war is going to take place, all right, following the civil war, is to destroy you heathen nations for afflicting the nation of Israel, as it says in Jeremiah 13:16. Why? Because the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, is the ultimate chess player. That's why in Exodus 15:3 it says that he's a man of war. You see? So this is 2 Ezra 15 and 21. Like as they do yet this day unto my chosen, so will I do also recompense in their bosom. Thus saith the Lord God, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. My right hand shall not spare the sinners, and my sword shall not cease over them that shed innocent blood upon the earth. So your blood's going to be shed because you shed our blood. Let's go back to Habakkuk 2. So there's going to be a lot of bloodshed in the civil war amongst these faithless reprobates in America, specifically Babylon the Great. All right. And that blood's going to transition. All right. Within the bloodshed of this full-fledged war, Harmageddon. All right. Including the blood of you Edomites being shed by Yahweh Shai. All right. This is prophesied in Isaiah the 63rd chapter. All right. Habakkuk 2 and 8. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. All right, you set your nest up amongst high, man, on high. All right, including your nest amongst the stars, including your satellite within the stratosphere. Okay, looking for to play God on earth through your Edomite God complex. Further prophesied in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4. And this is why DJT is boasting the proud Edomite that he should be. You should be proud, because after this, it's it for you devils, man. Okay? This is give me 1 second. All right. All right, so this is verse 10. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and hast sinned against thy soul. All right, including all the carnage, the carnality that you're inflicting over there on them dragons of Arabia. I'm going to get that report real quick. So on New York Post, Hezbollah, Quds force official eliminated in Israeli airstrike on Beirut. Said Hassan Bidair, a Hezbollah and Quds force official who allegedly helped Hamas plan an attack on the state of the Amalekites, allegedly, was one of 4 people eliminated in the latest airstrike in Beirut's southern suburbs, a local security officials told Reuters. And the devil's already been exposed, with this group right here, because this is an Amalekite creation. All right, so I've been bringing it out for a minute now. All right, then on top of that, to add insult to injury, you've eliminated the entire military chain of command of Hezbollah, including Hassan Nasrallah. Okay. All right, so there's not very many of them left in terms of their military officials and so forth. If you haven't eliminated them all by now, all right, case in point. All right, so anyways, go back to Habakkuk 2:11. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. Woe to him that buildeth the town with blood, and establisheth the city by iniquity. See? So what's the end result for you devils? Revelation 6:16. And said to the mountains and rocks, that's not it. Revelation 16:6, Salakia. It says, for they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, all right, the Israelites, all right. And thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. Meaning what? You shed our blood. Okay, you got an appetite. You got an insatiable appetite to shed the blood of the children of Israel, so-called Negroes, indigenous, and Israelite foreigners of the bloodline of the so-called Negroes and indigenous of the Israelites, the lost tribe of Israel. Well, the Yahweh B'Shem Yeshai has orchestrated for your blood to be shed in the midst of this last world's war. Okay. And, in the midst of you being slaughtered by your enemies, Yahweh Shai and the angels are going to descend into this realm and destroy the remaining of you left. In the aftermath or conclusion of that destruction, and in Harmageddon is a redemption of the sins of the redemption of the sins of Israel. All right, by having these curses removed from us. All right, and being established under the second holy covenant to rule this earth. All right, and righteousness. Okay, and peace forever. Well, we would be immortal, and we would get to enjoy the fruits of our labors in righteousness. Ruling this earth in righteousness, which will result in peace. Case in point. All right. So that's pretty much it. Get a couple of these precepts off the comment board, and I'm going to end it off. All right. Give me 1 second, Baba Kasha. All right. Let me see. One second. All right, Salakia. So this is in the Salakia. To Akim not getting these precepts for the sake of time. Trying to make this as quick and concise as possible. Having to clock back into the clock back in and continue to pick cotton for the rest of the day. So let me see. Brother Yawasop put Deuteronomy 23:19 NLT. Do not charge interest on the loans you make to a fellow Israelite, whether you loan money or food or anything else. And you devils have been doing that to us. But yeah, you claim we're neighbors, which we're not, obviously. Because the law, statutes, commandments applies to us. All right, and this is why you use that as a justifiable reason to be wicked and tyrannical. But it's gonna come back and bite you in the ass before it's said and done. I'll end it off here. Let me see. Let me get this one. Same brother, Haggai 2:22. And I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen, Yapah. And I will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them. All you devils are going to be destroyed, and all you other heathen nations, all right, through your armies in this last world war. All right, let me end this off here, brother, same brother. Ezekiel 35:6. Therefore, as I live, said the Lord, start at verse 5. Because I has had a perpetual hatred and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Verse 6. Therefore, as I live, said the Lord God, Yahweh, by Shem Yahushai, I will prepare thee into blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. All right, because even a bloodshedder, it says in the book of Sirach, when you defraud a man's wages. So I'm going to end it off on that note. All right. Call Allah, my Yahweh, by Shem Yahushai, Baruch Wadash. Ababa Ball, seen very soon. Shalom, Labachayim, Shal by Yasharwada, Shal Yasharala, meaning peace to the elect of the house of David of the nation of Israel. All right, with that. All right, Shalom to the elect, the water for the precepts, the water for tuning in, and on to the next one.